Girls of Reddit, what made you go from maybe I would date him to no way I would date him? He told me he was excited about the possibility of a relationship with me and couldn't wait to delete our individual FB profiles and create a joint couples one. No. Hell no. I was a single mom talking to who I thought was a great guy. Then he dropped, "I don't think I could raise someone else's child." Which I understood. Followed by, "Do you think your parents would adopt him, my son?" Hold up, what the? No. I understand not being comfortable with raising a child that's not your own, but suggesting I'll just give him up for you? You dude. You. He told me he was in love with me the second time we hung out. Not to mention, he used to call me in a fit of rage, sobbing profusely when his mother would cook him something he didn't fancy for dinner. Yeah, safe to say, that fling went nowhere. Finally a thread for me. After flirting with me for weeks, he saw a picture of my sister and told me she was gorgeous and much prettier than me. He's still kind of flirting with me after that. In all honesty, she is prettier than me, always has been, and I knew he would think it, but I never expected him to say it to my face. When I was 19, I had a part-time job. A guy I worked with was kinda cute. We'd hang out after work and play rock band, etc. He was nice. I thought we might kinda hit it off. Then one day he started telling me about how the Bush family and the royal family in England are all actually a race of lizard people and part of some giant conspiracy against humanity. So, yeah, I couldn't. So he was super into nerdy hell. Yeah, this could be awesome. Proceeded to quiz me on the most ridiculous to prove I was a real nerd. People like that, no wonder you're single. Edit. There ya go. u/magatuna8401. Edit 2. For context, I was writing an essay about superhero genre tropes and the use of IMAX, The Dark Knight Rises being the main text, and he starts asking me ridiculous questions, like what brand of makeup did they use for Heath Ledger's Joker, who isn't even into DKR. I told him, if he had an issue with my essay, he could grade it with what he thought I should get, and we would compare it with my actual grade. He gave me an E. I got an A. For real though, girls don't like nerd culture because we think it'll impress you. We like it because we are human beings with diverse interests, and we are getting real sick of you questioning everything we do or say. Edit 3. I love how half of the replies are guys now trying to explain to me what it's like being a nerd. Is the irony lost on you? I met a guy at a concert, and he seemed really laid back and funny at first, so I agreed to go on a date a few days later. I soon found out he had a serious one-upping issue. If he asked about my workday and I said it was really stressful, he'd say, "Oh, I'm sure it wasn't as bad as my day." Or if I said I think I overspent while clothes shopping, he'd say, "I paid $1,600 for new golf shirts today. I'm sure you didn't spend that." This went on about even the tiniest little things. The last straw was when I said I loved Frozen, and I'd probably seen it a million times. He said in all seriousness, "Oh, I've seen it 1,000,001. After 4 dates, I realized I absolutely cannot put up with someone constantly trying to outdo whatever I said. He was constantly correcting people's grammar to the point of absurdity. I was talking about one of my favorite board games and accidentally said Cosmic Encounters instead of Cosmic Encounter. He thought that one S was worth interrupting the conversation for, so he could correct me. I suddenly realized if I dated him, I would basically dating Sheldon. When I noticed how much he lied, it was practically constant. He would forget that he had already told me a different version of the stories he told me. Once he even up telling me what nationality his parents were. The first time he told me his mom was from A and dad from B. Second time mom was suddenly from B and dad from A. Tried telling him that he could be honest with me and just tell me why he felt the need to lie like that, but he just got mad at me and told me more lies. So I eventually gave up and just went with it. I still get sad thinking about him. I just think he was incredibly insecure and he had absolutely no reason to. I dated a guy who claimed that he was constantly getting into fights. He was always gloating about it, claiming he'd fought every guy in the school. He also claimed he had super senses. He would say things like, "Can you hear that?" No, of course you can't. And most people narrow their eyes when they focus. I open my eyes wider, so I can see everything. Just weird braggy nonsense. It was so bizarre. Two friends of mine briefly dated. We were all really excited about it, but then one broke up with the other suddenly. We asked what happened, and he said that the other friend just made up all the time. He claimed that he could conjure a fireball in his hand, and that he had once outrun a flash flood in a Jeep Wrangler. We were 14. He could not drive. I genuinely do not understand the pathological liar. I understand exaggerating sometimes to make stories more interesting, but blatant lies are just absurd. Edit. Softened a few words, as I came across with a sense of finality and dismissiveness that I did not intend. Oh man. I think I'm late to this, but I'm super freckly, and halfway through our first date beer, he started in about how freckled women ought to be flayed, how hideous freckles are, and he wouldn't shut up, on and on about how ugly freckles are. So I paid my tab, thanked him for his time, and he started to full out sob, gasping for air, sobbing about how he thought I was perfect for him, and how sorry he was. Before our first date, texted me and told me that he told his mom he met someone. Yeah, okay. During our first date, spoke non-stop about how smart, awesome, compassionate, etc. he is. When I told him I volunteered for an animal rescue, his response was a disgusted look, and oh, you're bringing stray to your home. After seeing that I was visibly by that remark, he proceeded to tell me how he really liked dogs, used to have a dog when he worked in Africa, took really good care of it, even take time off to take the dog to the vet, but unfortunately had to tie it in the yard when he had to escape in the night, but he made sure to leave it with some water, and about how he would really like to adopt a sick or disabled dog now. It was hard keeping a straight face after that. There was no second date. There's this guy who was smart, educated and very ambitious. We went out together a few times, and it was going fine, until he started criticizing me for the time I spend with my friends, and every time I wanted to go and see them, he acts as depressed, and needs to talk to me, so I wouldn't see my friends, and go see him. That was awful and childish. When I said, I think I want to do something with computers, he said, have you heard of Microsoft? Then he wrote Microsoft on a piece of paper and slid it across the table, and that was my career's interview over. He was good looking and superficially charming, we got along decently, and he wasn't actively mean or anything, so it took a while for me to realize that he was an awful guy to date. I did notice he wasn't very affectionate. I would buy him drinks and meals and shower him with compliments to make him feel better about his insecurities, but he never complimented me, paid for me, or said or did anything particularly nice. The sex was also a lot of me giving him head, and him never reciprocating. After we'd been dating for a few months, I was having a rough time, and opened up to him about my fears and insecurities, and instead of comforting me, he told me that my insecurities were completely ridiculous and illogical, and made me feel guilty for feeling bad. When I confronted him about it, he revealed that he doesn't believe in compliments or in comforting people because it encourages people to be insecure and doesn't fix the problem. It ended when he offered to make us breakfast. I ate a small plate of it and cleaned up everything for him, and he charged me $25 on Venmo. That's when I realized he may have actually been a sociopath. Was talking to this guy when I was 18. I met him on a dating site. Lots of was weird, tons of red flags, but he was really sweet, I thought. Anyway, he was coming into my town for the weekend, and he called me while he was driving. He asked me, what's the weather like for my trip? So, I told him what our local forecast was looking like. In the most demeaning and abusive tone I've ever been spoken to by a man, he goes, no, how will the weather be for my trip? I was obviously confused, and he became even more agitated. Asked me if I was stupid. Then, eventually hung up on me because I became defensive. He called me back a while later and apologized, but told me to never speak to him like I did again, and if we are gonna work out, you've got to learn to be able to do what I ask. Apparently, he'd wanted to know what the forecast was along his driving route for the entire 4-hour drive to my town. I'm not a thing meteorologist. So, I ended up meeting him, despite my gut instinct not to. At that point, there were relatives with me, and aware of what was going on. I was 18. I understand the decision was stupid. Let's move on please. He begged me to go for a ride with him to the gas station. I refused. Had I consented, I definitely would have been raped. No doubt. He ended up leaving, after making plans for a date for the following afternoon. 20 minutes later he had deleted his profile on the site we met, and we never spoke again. Thank God.